Welcome to Happy Homes and Gardens. I'm your host. My name is Daphne Royce. I am a real estate broker, architecture, and interior designer. Tom Kalinske is most well known for saving Barbie, and he has also transformed many toy, gaming, family entertainment, and education businesses. Tom is a former CEO of Mattel, Sega, Universal Matchbox, and Leapfrog. Let's welcome Tom, who will share his vision of them and now. Welcome, Tom.
Well, thank you. I'm happy to be with you.
Please tell us who you are and how you started your career in toy and family entertainment business.
Okay, oh my goodness. So I started a long time ago. I got a master's degree in business and I accepted a job with J. Walter Thompson in New York City to work in a new product development group. And one of the assignments we got was from Miles Laboratories because they needed a new children's vitamin because their existing children's vitamin called Chalks just didn't do well when Bristol Myers brought out Pals, which were animal shaped, multicolored, fruit flavored vitamins. And the Chalks business just disappeared. And so we had to develop a new concept for Miles Laboratories. And we did all this research, and the winning concept was Flintstones. And we went out to Elkhart, Indiana, Miles headquarters, and said, okay, you got to do Flintstones vitamins. And they said, get out of here. You're crazy. It was on primetime TV. It's now on Saturday morning. It's going away. And we said, no, 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 you've got to do it. And so anyway, we finally convinced them to do it, and it became the number one children's vitamin. It still is today. We did some interesting commercials with children climbing mountains or trees, and we did something called rotoscope where we had animated Fred Flintstone climbing next to them, singing yabba dabba doo, yabba dabba doo. Flintstones vitamins are good to chew. Anyway, the vitamin Flintstones took off. It became the number one children's vitamin, and I think it still is today, although I don't follow that industry, so I'm not sure of that. Anyway, Mattel took note of this marketing and decided that they'd like me to come out and interview. So I did, and I joined Mattel in 1972 as a product manager on preschool toys, which were CNCs, Jack in the Boxes, wooden putt-putt toys. And one day, the founder of Mattel came into my cubicle and said, Tom, Barbie sales declined last year. And Barbie was, of course, the biggest brand that Mattel had at that time. Still is today, by the way. But anyway, and she said, the retailers say it's over for Barbie. Toys R Us and Kmart and Target, they say it's over for Barbie. Do something else. And the Wall Street analysts, because Mattel was a public company, say, forget Barbie. Come up with another concept. It's over for Barbie. She said, Tom, my own Salesforce says it's over. We got to do something else. What do you think of that? I said, Ruth, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Barbie will be around long after you and I are gone. And she said, that's what I wanted to hear. I'm going to talk to Ray, who was my boss's boss, about getting you on the Barbie business. So I went on the Barbie business in 1973. Business had declined from 100 million to 42 million. I changed the strategy. I changed the packaging to all pink. Believe it or not, it wasn't all pink at that time. I started doing many different types of dolls, low price dolls, high price dolls with gowns designed by famous designers like Oscar de la Renta. I did a lot of careers. I astronaut Barbie, Olympic Barbie, um, veterinarian Barbie, doctor Barbie, teacher Barbie, you name it. We did all these different occupations, and we got more and more retail shelf space, and the business just took off. So it grew from 42 million to 75 million to 130 million to 250 million to 350 million to 500 million. And of course, I kept getting promoted along the way as the business was doing better. And the smartest thing I did was I hired a gal named Jill Barad out of the cosmetics business who really understood segmentation and fashion and what have you. And she took it from 500 million to $1 billion. Today, it's over $1 billion. The brand is doing very, very well. The movie was a smash hit, the biggest hit of last year. They have more movies planned. Uh, so all of that was a really great experience, and I ended up becoming CEO of Mattel. I introduced Masters of the Universe. I had to improve the Hot Wheels business. I left to to buy Matchbox toys out of receivership in the United Kingdom. Turned that business around. Ended up joining Sega and worked on the 16-bit Genesis and developed that business from practically nothing to 1.5 billion in the US and about 1 billion in Europe. So, and then I left there because I got intrigued by using video game technology to improve education. And I went with Leapfrog and used technology to make education more fun and interesting for kids. And so that's sort of a quick a quick summary of my career. I'm I'm pretty much retired now, although I serve on a number of boards, a couple of education companies, a couple of foundations that are involved in education, and I'm still pretty busy.
Have you ever imagined that Barbie and Ken will be so popular 50 years after you were introduced in Mattel?
I actually did. I thought Barbie would be around. As I said to Ruth Handler, the founder of Mattel, I said, Barbie's going to be around forever. She's going to be around way after Ruth and I are gone. And Ruth, of course, is now deceased. Uh, but the brand last year did very, very well. I think they had an increase of something like over 20% increase in sales last year. So very, very healthy business right now.
The Barbie movie was a huge hit in 2023. Do
Yes.
you know if there will be a sequel?
I do know, but I can't tell you.
Okay. All right, we keep that. We just look out for it. So, what is your decision-making strategy for all different businesses that you have in before?
Well, I'm a real student of whatever business I'm getting involved in. And I study the market and try to know more about that market than basically anybody else does. And then I understand what all the competition is doing. And my favorite saying is if your strategy is the same as what another company can do, you don't really have a strategy. And so I've lived by that and tried to incorporate that in all the things I do, and certainly did with Barbie and with He-Man and Masters of the Universe, and that's a whole nother story. Did the TV show there, first time a deal had been done with Group W Westinghouse, and gave the shows away free to every station in the United States. And in return, Mattel got slots for 3 commercials free. So we could run commercials within the Masters of the Universe movie. As it turned out, we couldn't use all of those spots. And of course, the value of a commercial is based on the ratings that it receives. And the ratings were so high, we ended up making a profit off of the television show, which we never expected. And that, of course, became kind of a model now that other people are doing. Hasbro's doing it a lot, and other companies are doing the same thing. Do a TV show based on the toy character. But it was the first time it had ever been done when I did it back in oh gosh, 1980, 1980. Yeah, right about 1980. So a long, long, long time ago. But anyway, um, I try to do things differently. I try to find gaps in the marketplace and don't do things the same way others are doing them. And then I love the idea at Leapfrog of doing something that had never been done before. Make toys really educational, not pretend education, but really educational. And we worked with Stanford University's School of Education. The dean there was a guy named Dr. Bob Calfee, and he really helped design almost everything that we did. And then he would say to us, okay, here's what you have to do for a first grader and when they're starting to learn to read. And we would say, okay, thanks, Bob. We're going to make it fun and interesting. And we would. And that curriculum would be used more and more and more because we'd made it fun and interesting. And we did that for many different grades and many different subjects. We did it for geography. We did it for math. We did it for science. And that to me is still going on today. My goal was then and still is to do personalized education, to make education more relevant to each child. So if you have a boy, a young boy who hates math, just won't do it, but he loves cars, let's teach him math in a car paradigm so that everything he does in math is car related and he'll like it because it's related to something he's interested in, cars. So that's still being done. There are companies doing that. And of course, with AI today, you can do that better and better than we ever could before at Leapfrog. So hopefully that will continue and it will be important for this country and other countries.
What's your view on today's technology and AI?
Well, I think my view is that, as I just said, it's going to be extremely helpful in education. It's going to be extremely helpful in medicine. And you're going to have the ability to make products more interesting, whether they were talking about toy products or computer products or radio shows. You're going to be able to make them more interesting to the consumer because you're going to know what those consumers are really interested in and have a better understanding of that consumer than you ever did before. So my view of AI is largely very positive. I know you can misuse it too, but I think most of the time it's going to be used in a positive way that's going to benefit society.
What is important about play and imagination? What is important to children's lives?
That's a great question. Well, there are many different experts on this, more expert than me. I mean, Maria Montessori used to say, uh, play is a child's work. A Russian professor back at the turn of the century, Igor Gursky, wrote a book about how important play is in education. Because if they're playing and learning, they're going to learn it better and it's going to stick with them better. And he made a distinction between forced play and natural play. And so you have to come up with ways of making the educational materials a natural way of playing. And that, of course, is what we did at Leapfrog and other companies are trying to do today. But play it inspires imagination. I mean, I look back on all the toys I worked on, and I'm proud that they really helped the creative process with kids. It inspired their imagination, inspired their storytelling or their creation of stories. And then in the video game world, it got it. What are video games? It's problem solving. It's learning how to solve a problem to advance through a game. So you're really teaching important skills on problem solving in most video games, not in all, but in most. So play is terribly important to education and learning.
I actually like most of video games. I don't like is it very violent. Would that really benefit children?
Well, well, that's a very controversial subject. We had to get in front of Congress about that one years and years and years ago. Um, but the thing that people mistakenly think about video games is they think video games are only for young children. That's not true. The average age of a video game player today is 31 years old. That means there are more older adults in their 30s and 40s playing or as many as there are under 30. So when we go to movies, do we expect all movies to be G rated? You want to see G rated movies only? Or every now and then, do you want to see a PG-13 movie or maybe even an R rated movie with a little bit of adult theming in it? The video game industry is no different. To grow, to be important, we have to appeal to all ages and all different types of involvement. And fighting, of course, is one of those themes that is important to a lot of men, probably not to many women. On the other hand, the guys aren't that interested in playing all of the word games and solitaire games and all of that stuff that women now love playing on their iPhones and computers. So, you have to look at the marketplace and develop product that appeals to each part of that marketplace. And that's why some violent games are important, just as violence in movies is important.
Are you telling me more men play video games than women?
Oh, still there are, yeah. But the women's side of it has grown exponentially. When I was involved in the industry in the 90s, I tried to get more women involved in games and I tried to do young girl games. I did My Little Pony. Hell, I did a Barbie game, video game at Sega. I did lots of themes that I thought would be appealing to young women, and they were, and it worked, and the market grew, but it was a small part of the market. Today, I believe it's about 40% of the market, so it's almost equal. It's almost a 50-50 market today.
You have a very accomplished career path. If you could have done one thing different in your life, what would it be?
Oh my goodness. You know, most of the things I did, I'm very pleased about. I had some things that I wish I had been able to be more forceful on getting accomplished. For example, when I was in the video game industry at Sega, I was very close to the Sony guys. They weren't making video game consoles then. They were just learning how to do game software. And and I had a very good relationship with them. And at one point, the head of the Sony Entertainment Division, a very smart guy, a PhD from Brandeis University named Olaf Olafsson, and I, we wanted to do one game console, and it could be called the Sony Sega or the Sega Sony, whatever, didn't matter. But our theory was, hey, when you do hardware, when you do a video game console, you don't make any profit on it. All of the profit comes from the video games that are played on it. So let's do one console. We'll share the loss because there's going to be a loss. Not going to make money on the console. But whoever does the better video games benefits, whichever company does that benefits from those sales and profits. Well, at the time, Sega was much better at doing video games than Sony was. So I thought, hell, this is really a great deal if we can get this done. But we weren't able to convince the bosses in Japan to do this. And I think if we had done it, it would have changed the market dramatically. And Sega would have benefited wildly, and the market would be much different than it is today.
How interesting, because I think Japanese probably has the biggest gaming industry, is it?
No, no,
No?
the U.S. market is far, far larger. And when we did Sega in the United, when I did Sega in the United States competing with Nintendo, we actually passed Nintendo in share of market and became larger than Nintendo. And in Japan, of course, Nintendo was the largest by a long shot. And the biggest Sega ever got in Japan was a 10 to 12% market share. I had a 55% market share here in the United States. So whenever the Japanese executives would say, well, why don't you do the things that we're doing over here? I'd say, well, why should I do that? You're failing. You're not being successful. You only have a 10% market share. We've got a 55% market share in the US. They have a 50% market share in Europe. Why should we do what you're doing and not be successful? That did not endear me to the Japanese management, but it's true.
That surprised me. I always thought in Asia was a bigger industry, but I guess I was wrong.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
The market today is almost $300 billion. The worldwide video game market, 300 billion market. It's projected to grow to 600 billion. It's already twice the size of the movie and music industries combined. It'll soon be 3 times the size of the movie and music industries combined. It is the single most used way of entertainment today, not just in the United States, but around the world.
We are forcing anything be more advanced than what we see today.
Well, it keeps getting better, in my opinion. I mean, frankly, if I look at a video game today, the quality, when you look at characters in the video games, you can't tell that they're not real people that are filmed. I mean, the creation of the artwork is so realistic. You can't tell the difference between a film movie and a video game. And so I think it'll just keep getting better. I think virtual reality will eventually become important in video games. I tried to do it when I was at Sega, but the machines weren't powerful enough to do virtual reality effectively. You'd put on this headset, which was heavy and big, and you'd get involved in a virtual world, but it was off-putting. It would make you dizzy. It would make you sick to your stomach. So it wasn't a great experience, but I think soon they're going to have little eyeglasses that are the same as the glasses you wear now. And those will be the virtual reality glasses that allow us to enter worlds we never knew we could enter in the future.
There is a book, Console Wars,
Yes,
that many talks about you.
yes.
That book is about 10 years ago, and I know there's a second book about you will coming out soon. Would you tell us more about this book?
Well, first of all, here's a copy of Console Wars. it was on the New York Times bestseller list years ago. It's still doing reasonably well in bookstores and online. You can buy it online, and there's an audio version of it as well. Uh, but a professor from UPenn is working with me on a new book, which will be my entire career, but more importantly, the lessons that I learned in my career. What did I learn when I worked on Barbie? What did I learn when I worked on Masters of the Universe and changed the male action figure market? How did I revive Matchbox in the UK, which was in bankruptcy when I went on it? And then, of course, it'll get into Sega and some of the things we did there, just as Console Wars does. But then it'll go on to Leapfrog. And as I talked earlier about using video game technology to make education more fun and interesting, and how is that working, and who's doing it well, and what have you. So that's what the book's going to be about. It's not really it's not going to be a biography so much as here's the business lessons that I learned in my career.
Are you going to share some with us?
I
Or
thought I just did.
no, maybe a piece of a story that can more details.
Yeah, it'll get into more details, I'm sure.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, it's been an interesting career, and as I said a minute ago, I'm very grateful that I helped a lot of children in their imagination play, their creative play, and in their problem solving, learning how to solve problems, and frankly, at Leapfrog, learning how to communicate, helping kids learn how to communicate. And I think that's very important, obviously. And I'm still involved with companies that are working on helping kids learn how to tell stories, for example, because telling stories and taking stories from one language to another, taking it from the United States to Japan to the Middle East to Africa, and sharing stories from around the world with children. So that kind of thing is what I'm involved in today.
That'd be nice. Language is interchangeable.
Yeah, well, the stories are interesting in, from one language to another. And obviously, you have to have the technology to change the language from one language to another very quickly and very easily. So the stories are very important, and one story from one culture to another is important for the other cultures to learn about and to hear about. So that's the kind of thing I'm working on today.
Do you use the stories from the US or use international
Both,
stories, like a different country have
both,
it?
both from certainly from the U.S. I'm working with a lady right now who had worked in China for many years. She's not Chinese, she's American. But she's doing a technology right now where you can switch from one language to another very quickly on like an iPad. And so you can go from English to Chinese or Chinese to English or English to Japanese or English to Spanish very, very quickly. And so I think that that kind of thing is going to become more and more prevalent in the future.
What would you like to see changed in our education systems?
Well, I think we get caught up in too many different dogmas that don't really work. And by dogma, I mean, for a while there was in the education world and the young kids are learning to read world, there was the concept of, well, whole language. Let's just teach them they can look at a word and they know what it is and they can say it. Forget phonics. Well, that's not really very good because you have to be able to sound out words too, to be able to explain them to others. And that's why phonics is so important today, or it always has been. And you need both phonics and whole world. So, but the education world gets caught into these different themes, these different dogmas that don't work. Lots of technology. We spent billions of dollars on technology in classrooms. Most of that technology has not helped that much, frankly. I mean, everybody thinks it should, including me. I think there should be a way of using technology that will really change kids' ability to learn. And I think that's going to happen. Um, but we've wasted an awful lot of money. You can go into schools around this country and other countries and open up a closet somewhere, and you'll see all this wonderful new technology, whether it's pads or whatever, shipped to the school, and it's not being used. Therefore, it can't work. And a lot of that was because there was no way of getting it set up. The teachers didn't know how to do it, and they usually don't have an IT person at every school in the country. So there's been a lot of wasted money on technology. And I always like to say the best use, the best change agent is the teacher in the classroom. If you have a great teacher, she can handle 24 kids or 35 kids, and she will get them to all to learn the subject that she's teaching. If you have an ineffective teacher, she can't teach two kids, and it doesn't matter. So, more effective educators or getting more effective educators is the most important thing I think we can do in this country and around the world.
Is that for all grades or just lower grade?
No, all grades,
All
all
grades.
grades.
Okay.
Even if you're a college student and you have an accounting professor who who's really dull and he doesn't inspire you to learn, you're not going to learn it. You won't learn it well anyway. So no, I think it's true for all ages, all grades.
You mentioned you're retired. So what would you like to do at your most of time?
Well, I'm still way too busy, frankly. I mean, I'm on the board of the Wisconsin School of Business. I'm on the board of something called Story World. I'm on the board of something called Teach the World Foundation, which is teaching really impoverished children in places like Karachi and Islamabad and Rohingya and Mali and teaching them their local language and that to read and write. That local language might be Urdu or Pashto or Farsi or Arabic, but teach them their local language and then teach them a little bit of English and a little bit of math so that they can get out of the slum and they can get some kind of a job rather than just be a garbage collector or a street sweeper. So I'm working on that. And then I'm working on something called Stitched Insight, which is using AI and large language model processing uh, for better decision making. So I'm still I say I'm retired, but I'm still a VC. I'm still a venture capitalist with El Saploy. So I'm involved in some investments. Uh, so I'm retired, but I'm still busier than I should be.
Is the VC work you do is it related to education?
Uh, it has been, but it's very difficult in the VC world. There are relatively few VC firms that are really interested in education. Some have done extremely well, like GSV Capital or Andreessen Horowitz Capital or Kapoor Capital or Vinod Khoslas Capital. Uh, so some have done very, very well, but an awful lot of them just say, hey, it's too difficult. It's too hard to make money in education. Let's go do something else. And frankly, that's what was said to me when I was at Sega and I was trying to do education at Sega through a product called Pico, which was we positioned as the child's first computer. And the board of directors said to me, why are you messing around with this thing? Yeah, if you just do one new Sonic game, you'll do 5 times the amount of revenue as working on this thing called Pico. And of course, they were right. It's easier to make money in other areas than education. So that's why there aren't very many VCs that really are working in education.
Well, thank you, Tom. I really appreciate your time. Learn a lot. Learn a lot about what you did.
Thank you for putting up with me.
You were great. Well, I really appreciate your time and thank you very much. This is a very insightful of what you did before and now, and really appreciate that you're saving Barbie.
Well, I am too. Okay. Well, bye bye.
Bye.